Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So I said I was going to do a live stream this evening. So Saturday evening, September 1st, 2018. Just waiting for people to come on. I'm doing this from my phone today in the living room. Just moving the phone a little bit here. See a few of you have come on. Just trying to get comfortable and oops, almost dropped the phone. So you saw the title of my live stream. I'm talking about whether the cycle that we've had these last 100 years since World War I, I would say, of big government, central banking, and inflation, if that's coming to an end. And whether we're going to get the next 100 years of more freedom and smaller government. And I think we can't expect total freedom, but nor can we expect to be totally enslaved. I think we have things swing in cycles. And yeah, I did an interview with Mike from RTD, or Rethinking the Dollar. I enjoyed that. He's a really nice guy. I really enjoyed that interview. I wouldn't mind doing more interviews with him. I might interview him as well. That could be an idea. So yeah, I think I've been doing some thinking. I don't think things will ever be perfect, of course. There's no such thing. Good evening, Patty. Nice to see you here. There's no such thing as utopia. But I think there is like a pendulum that swings from tyranny to freedom. And hopefully the pendulum is now swinging towards more freedom. I know there's a lot of people out there who will be unhappy. It seems to me that a lot of the public expect big government and expect things to be done for themselves. Hi, Aaron. Happy Labor Day weekend. Well, thank you. I mean, we had a long weekend last weekend here. It's not called Labor Day, but unfortunately, we don't have a long weekend this weekend. But thanks anyway. To tell you the truth, for me, it doesn't really matter the holidays, like or a day off, because I do my videos every day, and I'll do it on Sunday or Saturday, any day. I might not say hi to people when they come on because I'm on my phone and it scrolls very quickly. Lord Humongous, agree. Hey, Lord Humongous. Lord Humongous is in Colorado. So why am I talking about like the pendulum and cycles? Well, because if you go, hey, the realist thinks, hey, Mary, they haven't amassed all this debt to let us off. Maybe not, but it might also be a way to end this game of big government, because we all know that big government needs big debt, a lot of spending, but it's becoming so unsustainable that it could all implode. And that could be a good thing. That means that we'll move towards more private the private sector, and I think Martin Armstrong talks about that. I think he thinks the cycle of big government started in the 30s with the New Deal, and also like fascism in Europe. Let's see, what do we got here? Aaron Levy says, Greg Manarino said yesterday that the emerging market currency crisis is starting to hit U.S. banks. Yeah, it could hit U.S. banks and European banks. Pad says, Mario, Mike, rethinking the dollar, really knows nothing about the occult crap that we both know. We know you would be good. You would be good from him. Well, yeah, he might not know some of the stuff we don't, but I think he's a good guy, and I like his channel, and he interviewed me. I didn't mind that. It's nice to talk to someone different and do an interview. So let's see, is this working here? Yeah. Richard McCorkindale, popcorn time. Yeah, so, and one of the reasons why I'm looking at the cycles is that prior to 1914 and World War One, the world had gone for almost 100 years with very small government. People think that government was big in the 19th century, but it wasn't. I think the British Empire was run on 5,000 civil servants. They ruled a bit, the old saying of Britannia rules the waves. I know there were wars from the end of Napoleonic Wars to the beginning of World War One. There were wars, the Civil War in the U.S., there was the Crimean War, there were some smaller wars, but nothing really huge. So it was a relatively peaceful century, and it was a century of small government, low taxes, I would say. And it was a century of industrialization, development. If you compare how people were living towards the end of 19th century, beginning of the 1900s to the early 1800s, people were living a lot better off. Standard of living was better. Of course, nothing is perfect, but I think no one would have thought on the eve of World War One that the world was going to turn into inflation nightmare, a big government for the next 100 years, that we'd have two world wars, that we'd have the Cold War, and that we would be where we're now. I think most people probably thought that things would never change back in 1914, but they did. And I think it's the same thing today. A lot of people think that the world will keep going as it will. You know, big government, especially in Europe, welfare state, cradle to grave, socialist medicine. But I personally hope, it's not only hope, but I think what keeps the welfare state going is, in my opinion, fiat money and central banking. And I think the Rothschilds, you know, Richard McCorkindale is talking about there, they know about this, and the powers that be, they play this game, and they think they know how the cycles work, and that they need to move the general public and the world to more a freer environment. So I think it could even be engineered that they have created this huge fiat money bubble just in order to bring everything down, because they got people used to big government, to socialism. So it would be very hard to get them off if there wasn't a problem. So they have to create a problem. And that's my way of thinking. Will that affect us in the very short term? Maybe, but this is more longer term, and you might think, you know, I don't care what happens in 50, 100 years, but I think you should. If you have children and grandchildren, I think it's something that you should look towards too, and even for yourself, even if you don't believe it in the short term. I think you know, for people of us who, you know, who are in the alternative and, you know, watch my videos, it's always good to try to be as free as possible, right? And I think it will get easier to do so. I might be wrong, but I actually think that could be the black swan of the next 100 years, that we're going towards a cycle of a lot more freedom. Rick H asks about Executive Order quadruple 10. Yeah, that was the JFK executive order. Some people say that it proved that JFK wanted to put the U.S. back on the gold, on like started printing money and have United States Treasury notes instead of Federal Reserve notes. That he wanted to end the Fed. Some people have gone, you know, they say that that was his intention. Some people say that it had, that order had nothing to do with that, and that Kennedy wasn't really going after the Federal Reserve. We don't know. It's true. It was an executive order, Rick. It was signed by Kennedy, but some people actually think that Kennedy actually wanted that was the executive order that he signed was part of another executive order, and that eventually they would cease issuing U.S. Treasury notes, and that it was the last batch. But some people say that he actually wanted to put the U.S. Back on you know, government issued money without debt. It's questionable. I'm not sure. Peter McLeod, a good book on cold weather vegetable production is Backyard Winter Garden. Monaco 64 is chilling today. Well, sometimes it's nice to change from the study. I'm in the living room. My wife is watching some TV in the study. I didn't want to like interrupt her. And sometimes it's just nice to sit here. And I'm doing this on my phone as well. That's why sometimes I read through this. It's not as easy as on a big screen. So you excuse me if I don't get your questions. Maybe ask them again. So yeah, I don't know what you guys think. Maybe you could comment if you think we are entering a long-term cycle of smaller governments. It's not going to happen overnight, just like big government didn't happen overnight in 1914. Hopefully, it will also be a century of less wars. Someone I think mentioned here about Charles Nenner and the war cycles that we're due for a big war. I hope we're not. Ohio chemtrails. Hi, Ohio chemtrails. Nice to see you here. The other thing I wanted to talk about is silver. And I just see that Peter Tenaglia just bought March SLV call options. Seems too easy. What do you think? Well, that's speculation. I've traded a lot of options. I used to work as a futures and options broker. March, you've probably paid quite a bit of premium for that because it's a long-term option. The only thing about options is that if it doesn't move and you don't get it right, you lose your premium, but you also only lose what you put in, and loss is limited. Ideally, I think that buying physical is the best thing, but if you want to speculate, I'm not going to stop you. Al Cubes, when golfing? Well, I'm gonna play golf tomorrow morning, Sunday morning. It's like a alternate. Well, not alternate. It's like a team thing. So it's me. I'm gonna play with another guy with a higher handicap. So it's a club competition. The season's ending here in the UK. We do play in the winter, but it's the season's golf season's ending. But plan to keep playing. So I've got here a few coins. These are my favorite, the 1964 Kennedy half dollars. Look at these; they're in really good condition. These I have quite a few of these. It's one of my favorites. So it's 90% silver. And 1964 was the last time that U.S. Coinage was 90% silver. And they did a Kennedy in 1964, half dollar. And I've also got a half crown, which is pretty much the same size of a half dollar. It's a UK coin from 1918. So just about when World War I ended, and it's 0.925 or sterling standard. That's why, the currency in the UK is called sterling. A lot of people don't get that, silver is really important, and I'm not saying I'm not into gold. Of course I am, but it's nice to talk a little bit about silver. If you look at all the different languages, in French, argent means money, but it also means silver. Let's see, someone is asking here. Max Seidenberger, are you part of British Fight? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Is that a group? I'm not part of any group. I'm more of an individualist person. Uh, I don't like to join groups and things like that. I'm more of a, I'd say a loner. I got your last name right. Yeah, I do speak a bit of German, Max. I don't know if you're German, but that's a German name, Seidenberger. Yeah. Crypto Bird Dog. Hi, Bird Dog. Nice to see you here. Yes, silver means money in Spanish as well. Plata, in French, argent. In English, the money of England is sterling. That's, the standard of 925 silver, sterling silver. Uh, yeah, so it is okay. Red Snapper. Hi, Red Snapper. Silver Nexus, Hyman Echo, thanks for great content. Oh, you're welcome. Hey, where's the wallpaper? Well, hi, Richard. I'm in the living room right now, so there's no wallpaper. My wife is in the study watching TV with Billy, and I thought I didn't want to interrupt her, so I thought I'd come in the study. Argentum AG, Mexican Libertad. Yeah, I have some of those coins, 1 ounce coins, Mexican Libertad. So yeah, I've got my, if some of you haven't seen, I've got my Kennedy $50 here. I also have some $50 pre-1964. But most of them are 1964 $50. I got them from a coin dealer near where I live. He always gets some, even here in the UK, so it's quite convenient. Patrick says, watch Ron Paul and Mike Maloney this afternoon. What a man. How has he not become USA president? I know Ron Paul, I think, well, he hasn't become president because the powers that be don't want him to be president. I think it was 2008 when he was running for the Republican candidacy. They screwed him. The mainstream media wouldn't cover him, even though he was doing really well. I think yes, 2012. Sorry, Lord Humongous. He was, beating people really easily in the primaries, and they wouldn't cover him. I think that was, electoral manipulation by the deep state there, because Ron Paul should have been the pick. But as people say, the candidates for presidency or anything, they're selected by the powers that be, so we can elect them. That's why I never really vote. I know there's an election in Brazil in October, and I get stuff from the consulate in London to vote, for the election. And in Brazil, you're supposed to vote, and if you don't, you get fined. And the last time there was an election a few years ago, I didn't vote because I don't really think it's worth it. And then when I went to renew my passport, they said I had like a voting certificate, not as a voting certificate, but electoral certificate. And they said, "Oh, where is your last stamp for the election?" I said, "I didn't vote." And I said to the lady, "I don't believe in politics and I don't follow it." And she let me off. She didn't fine me. But I also have, of course, an Italian passport. And the reason I have that is because on my father's side, his family was Italian. In the 1980s, my dad decided to take an Italian passport because the law in Italy says that if you're up to your great grandfather, if your great-grandfather was Italian and you can prove it, you can get a passport. And that's what my dad did because his grandfather was Italian. So he got the passport and the whole family got the passport. And that's the other thing I wanted to talk about. In an ideal world, of course, of small government, I think in the 19th century, there weren't passports. People could travel freely around the world. Yeah, a lot of people think that passports are something that have always existed. Am I saying we're gonna not need passports again? No, but that would be great if we could all travel without passports. I think it would be great. The reason why we don't have that anymore, I think a lot of it is to do with the welfare state. Because if you allow people to move freely between countries and nations, there's people who are going to go to other countries to abuse the welfare state. And that's why I think that if we go towards smaller government, more freedom, these things might revert back. We could, in 20, 30 years' time, we might be again talking about a world where we don't need passports because, hopefully there won't be a welfare state. People will be freer. Maybe it's wishful thinking and the cycle won't work, but it's nice to imagine those things. Trump is locking people in who are behind in taxes. Yeah, I think, the income tax is unconstitutional, and I think it's really bad. Rick says we will have ID very soon. Yeah, we don't have IDs in the UK as well. In the EU, people have IDs and they find it funny that the English don't have IDs. I think it's a good thing. Brazil, they have IDs. So all the countries that aren't as free have IDs. Mustafa asking, who are the main players in the Forex market? The big banks. The big banks are the main players in the FX market. There might be some big foreign exchange speculators who use the big banks, but I would say it's like JP Morgan, Deutsche Bank, all the big international banks, maybe some hedge funds, and also the central banks. They're big players in the FX market. Aaron Levy, Mary, do you still maintain that the Dow will not break the 26,000 high soon? 26,600 highs. Well, yeah, it looked like in the beginning of the year that we weren't. Right now, it's fairly close to that level. Who's to, I don't claim to say that I am always right. I've noticed, of course, the S&P has made a new high. We're around 26,100 in the Dow. But the other thing that makes me think that maybe it won't hit that level again is that all the other major markets in the world seem to be topping and they haven't made a new high. But I could be wrong, with all the money that they throw at the system and the central banks. Maybe it will, but at the moment it hasn't. Pad, Mario, I disagree completely. We will never see small government, but for moments in history to come as we transition into, let me see, into bigger government, I hope I'm wrong, and you're right. Yeah, I mean, and I'm not even talking about, what I'm talking about is more the pendulum is going to swing from big government that we've had in the last 100 years to smaller government. The how small it will be is difficult to say. You're probably right. It won't be. It might never be again like we had in the 19th century, where we had very small bureaucracy. We had no passports, but hopefully it will be freer than it was 50 years ago. Hopefully we're both wrong and we'll be really free. But if it is, if we go to a lot smaller government and freedom, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to suffer because they've been used to being taken care of by big governments. They're not going to like it, and they're going to have a tough time. Lord Humongous, when these bastards collapse, the whole thing will see you will see small government. Yeah, that's what I'm hoping, Lord Humongous. But Trump is making government a little smaller. No, I don't think he is for now, but he might be making it bigger so that it implodes. His tax cuts were not followed by, a cutback in government. So the deficit and the debt is growing, but that might lead to a collapse. So, yeah. Pad SD Billion stated yesterday, keep some powder dry because he expects lower prices through the first part of 2019. Well, we'll see. Would Europe be better off with the old order of small kingdoms like the Esterhazy in Austria? I think Europe would be probably a lot better off, freedom-wise, if we go back even to the small city states. In Italy, up until the 1860s, I think Italy was just there was no Italy. It was small republics, small principalities. Yeah, I mean, I think the smaller the political how makeup, the better. Or like the dollar vigilante Jeff Berwick says, it would be great if we had 7 billion sovereign governments, i.e., each individual freedom for everyone. He's into anarchy and anarcho-capitalism. I'm not too sure if there will be a day when everyone can look after themselves and live in peace, because there's always going to be people who are not responsible, who are not self-reliant. But that doesn't mean to say that we can't try to be that ourselves. Crypto Bird Dog, government has to borrow American pensions to balance the budget. Yeah, I mean, I think in Poland a few years ago, they took over people's pensions to do that. Aaron Levy, I enjoyed the NASDAQ chart you put up this morning. I think the next crash will be like the .com. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing looking at that chart how people seem to forget these things. That's why I put the chart there, just for people to see it. Deceived no more. Do you think we'll ever have truth in the economic system? Unfortunately, probably not. But it doesn't mean to say that we can't know the truth, and that we can't try to do things that will actually help us, because we can benefit from it. And I'm not trying to say that we should be dishonest with other people and take advantage of them. And if I thought we should act like that, I wouldn't be making these videos and trying to help people out. I think it's good to cooperate. But yeah, we need to play the game sometimes. It doesn't mean to say we have to be like the Rothschilds, of course, and try to create havoc in the world and wars. And I think it's possible to do that. David Morsilli, why not seek order above individualism? Yeah, it's always a fine balance. I think it's important to respect individual freedom. I think the Bill of Rights is a great document, but at the same time, you need to keep some kind of rule of law, and that's the unending question. I think the pendulum, right? Big and small government. Definitely UBI. Is that ut- universal credit or something? Yeah, I don't believe in that. Universal basic income. I think that's socialism. To be honest, I think people still need to create value individually to have a fulfilling life. You can't just live off. Who's going to pay for that? Yeah, it's communism. That's right. Steve C. EOS is about to absolutely explode over the next 6 months. Everything I'm seeing and hearing points to this. The working product I have seen privately is mind blowing. Mark Jeffrey, Garden CEO. Yeah, I mean, some of you might know that I do have some. I have put some money into EOS, and hopefully it will work out. Just trying to read. It's not as easy when I do this on the phone because the screen is not as big and your comments go through a lot quicker. Crypto Bird Dog, my county taxes land and will what's this? Sell my land if I don't pay county property tax. Yeah. Universal vibes. Hi, universal vibes. Eric Olson, Rick, I wish you very well. So for those who are coming on right now, today I'm talking about whether the pendulum of, from big government, small government is swinging more towards smaller government. And the only reason I talk about that is because the 19th century was a century of relative peace and small government and economic growth and sound money. We had the gold standard. And then, with World War One, everything changed. And, you know, the pendulum has been swinging towards big government, a lot of wars, inflation in the last 100 years. And the thing I said in the beginning as well is that the thing that I said that in 1914, probably very few people would imagine that 100 years from henceforth that the world would be as it is today, and it might be the same thing, 100 years from now. Maybe people will be a lot freer than they're now, and we're just living in the transition. Mario, does paying more taxes slow down growth? Yes, it does, because all it means is that you're taking more money. The way I look at taxes is when government takes part of your life away, because when you work and you produce something and you generate an income, and the government takes half of that income from you, it means that they're like you're half slave. So the higher taxes are, the less incentive you have to work. Why should you work to produce things of value, to exchange it for other things, if government is going to take those things away from you? So of course it leads to slower growth. Rob Bishop, I think you should auction off a lunch meeting like Warren Buffett does. The money raised could go to charity, and the winner pays the meal sometime at Christmas. Well, we'll see. So paying more taxes decrease the velocity of money as well? Probably too, because people don't. The other thing is people don't want to spend the money either because they want to save it. They don't want government taking it. But it has more to do with confidence. Oh, Crypto Bird Dog, thank you for the. I think it's you. Yeah. Crypto, thank you for the super chat. Always appreciate your experience and perspectives. Billy, you're a good dog. Yeah, Crypto Bird Dog. Billy is with my wife in the study, and I'm here on my own in the living room. Yeah, the crypto market is picking up again. It can move very quickly. What else do we got here? Lord Hummings, welcome to America, land of the free and home of the slave. Yeah, I mean, it's not only America. I mean, America's lucky though, in relative terms. It's still fairly free. The one thing that's not really good about America is tax-wise is that if you're an American, you go live abroad and you work abroad and you pay tax in another country, you still have to pay tax in the U.S. If but you know, being Brazilian or having an Italian passport, I don't have to pay any tax in Italy or Brazil if I live here and and work and pay taxes in the UK. Richard Langelotti, thank you for the super chat. Buy Billy some nice treats with this. I will. He likes dentist sticks. Billy, I'll tell you the story. He's got what's called dry eye. So his tear ducts don't produce tears. So his eyes get very dry and they get gunky. So I have to put like some ointment in his eyes every morning. And the way to for him to sit down for me to put that is that I always give him a dentist sticks after that. So whenever I sit down to put his ointment, he's really happy about it. So that will go towards that. Thanks, Richard. Get him some C60. I'll have a look at that. I don't know what that is. Good Doge Dad. Yeah, Doge, the Doge coin. Do you guys remember the Doge meme? Years ago, I think 5, 6 years ago, the Doge meme. Lord Humongous, thanks for the super chat donation. No taxes, free trade. I agree, Lord Humongous. You know, the U.S. just needs to go back to the Constitution. The income tax is not constitutional. It's easy for me to say that. The other thing in the UK as well, the history of the income tax, it was after the Napoleonic Wars of the early 1800s. The British Parliament passed the income tax, and they said it was going to be a temporary tax to pay for the Napoleonic Wars. And we still have it 200 years later that we still have an income tax in the UK. But it's funny because today, this weekend, is exactly 26 years since I came to live in London. So, you know, I'm 53, and so I've lived almost half my life in the UK, and I haven't lived anywhere else as long as I've lived in the UK. I lived in Brazil for like the first 21, 22 years of my life, and then I lived for 5 years in Switzerland. So yeah, it's been 26 years since I've been here. And yeah, there's a lot of things that are I don't agree with here, but there's a lot of things that I don't agree with in Brazil or in the States. But overall, I'm very happy that I have stayed in London in the UK. It's still a fairly nice place. I know people read about what's going on here. Yes, there are bad things, but it's not everywhere. MM No is here, my cheerleader. Hi, MM No, nice to see you. let's see, Pat, the Constitution has been officially dead. Yeah, since the Act of 1871. Yeah, I've read about that. And the other thing as well, which was a result of the Civil War, is that it created citizens. Because Americans were not supposed to be citizens of the United States. They were like citizens of, how can I say, each individual state. Rick H., is Brazil sending military to the border? I assume you're talking about Venezuela. Brazil does border Venezuela way up north. I haven't read about that. I'm sure, I'm sure there's a lot of, I have read that there's been a lot of Venezuelans trying to get into Brazil, which is, when I grew up and I was living in Brazil, that was unheard of because Venezuela was a fairly prosperous country back then. I think I'd never been to Venezuela. The only time, well, I've been to the airport in Caracas. I think once we flew from Brazil to Miami or something like that, and there was the flight had a stop in Caracas, Venezuela. That was the only time I've been there. My mom and dad did go to Venezuela. My dad, some of you might know, was into sailing a lot, and he went one year to sail. I think the South American Championships in Venezuela. Will Nichols, Wonga. Yeah, Wonga, they are a payday lender in the UK, and they've just gone bust. But my wife and I were talking about that this morning, and we said, the people who owe them money, they're not going to be off the hook because the creditors of Wonga, I'm sure they're going to go after the people who owe the money. Peter says Brazil has sent troops to the border to stop migrants crisis. Rinse and repeat. Yeah, that's something new for that definitely is something new for Latin America. We haven't had those kinds of crises because, and I would say, not that South America has been a haven, but it's just that the instability in South America has always been fairly equal. So people haven't really moved from country to country. But with what Venezuela now, it's really disintegrating. So that's why that is happening. Latin America is going down. Well, I mean, I wouldn't go as far as that. I mean, Brazil, people are used to to these crises, so I'm not too sure. Lord Humongous, I love America. I hate my government. Yeah, me too. I love England and the UK, but I hate the political class here and the government. They even call themselves, in the British House of Commons, when they address each other, the MPs, they call each other Right Honorable Gentleman or Right Honorable Lady. I mean, they're not honorable. I mean, they're the biggest liars, and yeah, I guess it's a pretend, it's an act, I would say. Yeah, people voted them in. That's right, Kevin. And that's why until I get a candidate that like Ron Paul, I will not vote because by voting, you legitimize these people. Why are you going to vote for them? If someone came from the street, mafia guys came from the street and said, you can choose between Tony or Gino, but you have to vote for one of us so we can, extort you. I would say, no, I'm not going to vote for you. Of course, I might get into trouble, but I wouldn't want to vote for either of them. Trump is mafia. Well, you know, he has been involved with casinos. And yeah, I mean, casino is run by the mafia, isn't it? So you could be right. Yeah, George Carlin, Richard Langelotti says, George Carlin was right about voting. I like, yeah, George Carlin was really great. I think he he was very funny. Pat says, someone says here, Pat says, the future of the U.S. because the education system indoctrinates the students into loving socialism. Yeah, I mean, education, there's an interesting woman. She's been actually on InfoWars years ago. Izzy Bert. It's I think it's IsyBert. Look her up, Izibert Education, and she was a part of the Reagan administration, and her father was actually Skull and Bones. I forgot her first name. She married a Belgian guy. Her name is Izibert, but her dad was Skull and Bones, so she was part of the establishment. But she exposes how public in the US is called public, in the UK it's called state education. It's all about brainwashing the kids. I highly recommend her. I think it's Catherine Izibert. I'm not sure. I forgot her first name, but just go Izibert Education. You should find some interesting videos about her, with her talking about it. Hi, Renee. Nice to see you here. Eric Olson says, "Don't trust anybody." Sometimes I do feel like that, but unfortunately, if we're going to have a world where we have economic exchange with people, we need to have some kind of trust. I think what he means is like, yeah, be careful. Don't be too trustworthy. Renee, hi, Marriott. What about big short position in commitment of traders report in precious metals? I haven't looked at the latest about the COT report, but from what I've seen is that the speculators, the hedge funds, they're heavily short, and they usually get it wrong. While the commercials, they're actually starting to go long for the first time in years. So that's what's going on, I think. I haven't looked at the latest one. Peter says he doesn't even trust himself. Yeah, sometimes yeah, yeah, it's like very easy to get off the straight and narrow. Peter Tenalia, Nazis did not call themselves Nazi; they called themselves progressives. Well, it was the National Socialist Party, wasn't it? National Workers Socialist Party, NASDP, I think. Deceived no more. I thought, oh, sorry about this. Deceived no more. What did he say? Oh, it's gone. Yeah, NSDAP. That's right. National Socialist Deutsche Arbeitpartei. Yeah, the Nazi party. David, when will China and Russia undermine the COMEX price manipulation of silver and gold? Well, I think they've been undermining that for years now through buying the physical. But yeah, I mean, they just at the moment it isn't. But it's not going to last forever. In the 60s and early 70s, they had the London gold pool, and they were able to keep gold pegged at $35 an ounce, but it didn't last forever. Arbeit Mart Frei, yeah, that's what they had in the entrance of Auschwitz at the gate. Mary, do you read Martin Armstrong? I haven't. Sometimes when it's published, sometimes they put it on Zero Hedge. I actually got into Martin Armstrong over 10 years ago when he was still in jail. One of my colleagues at work found his stuff being published on the internet. I used to enjoy reading him more then. Sorry about this. Bobby Blake says, oops. Some say JP Morgan will soon allow the silver to return to its real value. Well, that would be great. I haven't heard about that. Patty Beck, Mario for UK Prime Minister. No, I don't think I would want to do that. Adolf Hitler was fighting against the very Bolshevisms you have seen today. Yeah, that's ironic. He was fighting communism. Billy for president, yeah. Not Billy Clinton, but Billy the Shih Tzu. Who won World War II? Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, the socialists seem to have won it. Germany is certainly doing better than a lot of countries in Europe now. Whoops. What's going on here? Yeah, you heard some silver. Yeah, I was showing some of my 1964 Kennedy half dollars. Is one of my favorite silver coins. And I also have a 1918 half crown, which is a British coin, and it's kind of the same size and weight of the half dollar, the half crown. Peter says JP Morgan doing the bidding of the government. Well, JP Morgan, the story about JP Morgan, I think Nomi Prince talks about that in one of her books. JP Morgan bailed out the US Treasury in the 1890s. They ran out of gold. So the U.S. Treasury owes J.P. Morgan a lot, and I think that's why the U.S. Treasury, with their exchange stabilization fund, they use J.P. Morgan as their bank. Red Snapper, Mario, what do you know about Russia gold deposits? Do you mean like the deposits underground? I think Russia has a lot of gold, geographically, is quite wealthy mineral wise, but also they've been buying a lot of gold. I think their gold, Russian central bank has about 2,000 tons of gold. Yeah, I need an assistant. Yeah, it's a bit tricky doing it with the mobile phone or the cellular or my Apple. Usually I do it in front of a screen, my computer screen. Rick H, Russia has gold in the New York Fed. Well, I recommend they take it out of there. That's a silly thing. They might have some gold here at the Bank of England as well. It's strange, like how these central bankers say that gold is not money anymore. It's a barbarous relic. but they still keep gold, and they keep it at other central banks around the world. It tells you that it is part of the system, right? Yeah, JP Morgan may be the government. You could be right. Lord Humongous says after World War II, U.S. murdered over 1 million Germans. Well, I have seen documentaries about how a lot of German civilians and military died after the war, starvation or whatever. Yeah, and I think the number is huge. From 1945 to 1948. And I have an interesting story. When I worked in Switzerland, my bosses in Geneva, they were German, and we did a lot of business with Germany. And they took me to Frankfurt one year to play, to meet their clients in Frankfurt. And they also had the Frankfurt Stock Exchange golf competition. And they didn't play golf, so I represented our firm. And I was driving with one of my bosses from Frankfurt to play golf, and it was in the countryside. And there's an old building on the side of the road. And my boss said to me, Mario, that building there was where the U.S. kept, prisoners of war after World War II. And he said 45,000 Germans died there. And he wasn't angry or anything, and he wasn't anti-American at all, but he just told me that. And I was surprised, because he was never the kind of guy to talk about these things. And it just came out. He told me that building there is where 45,000 people, prisoners of war, are not supposed to be allowed to starve to death, right? So that's something we never hear in the mainstream. Yeah, Lord Humongous. That's the thing, the powers that be, they go after the worst instincts of humans. Like, they pit them against each other, they create enemies. It's the old Hegelian dialectic of divide and rule. And we need to get away from that. What do you think? Sorry, excuse me. What do you think of QAnon? Says Bobby. I'm not too sure about QAnon. I have seen videos that were really encouraging and supposedly from QAnon. I know Lionel. I've subscribed to his channel. He's quite good. He talks a lot about QAnon. He went to the White House. I think it was a birthday present, and he met President Trump. And he said in his live streams, I listened to him, people were asking, oh, did you ask him about QAnon? And he said, no, I didn't. But one thing I would say, and this is from Anthony Sutton, who says that there's three kinds of information. First is the information the establishment wants the public to know, to absorb, or the sheeple. The second is information that is out there but has to be asked from the establishment. Could be classified. And the third is information that you have to, that they want, they will redact, they'll never come out, and you have to really fight for it. And that's why I'm not too sure about QAnon, if it's for real. I think it's the second level of information. It is contrarian information. It is non-mainstream, but I think it's still controlled by the powers that be. Red Snapper, the rumor is Russia gold deposits so large that one of the reasons America got to the gold standard was the amount of leverage and power Russia would have over the rest of the world. Oh, you mean one of the reasons why America doesn't want the gold standard? Or they might not have a choice, in that matter, because if Russia adopts the gold standard, it will be very difficult to stop it. Maneko, what do you think of GDL, or do you mean GLD? I don't like, if it is GLD, I don't really like ETFs. I prefer buying the physical, be it silver, like $half, which I think are great coins, or I don't have any gold here with me, or physical gold. GLD, if you want to just play the price movement, fine. But if you really want to have precious metals as insurance, I don't recommend it. Oh, GDL, Goyim Defense League. I haven't heard of that. That's a good one. We are all Goyim, right? Unless you are of a particular tribe. Are you seeing the dinar in London much? Heard rumors. Well, I don't know. Do you mean the gold dinars, like Islamic dinars, silver dinars? No, I haven't seen any. I mean, I don't really care if it's a dinar or a ruble, unless it's as long as it's gold and silver. That's the great thing about gold and silver. It's neutral money. It's apolitical, so you could have Saudi Arabia have silver dinars, or the U.S. have silver dollars, or England have half crowns. It doesn't matter. It's the same value, right? That's why I think it would be great if we go. That's why it's so important to go back to sound money and non-fiat money, because I think the world would be a lot more peaceful because we'd actually be exchanging value for value. There's always like countries that will cheat when you have fiat money. They'll print more than others. They'll try to manipulate their currencies, and that's why we are where we are today. Oh yeah, dinar is gold, dirham is silver. That's right. Malta government is publicly pushing to be a blockchain center. Yeah, paper money is worthless. Cyrus 369. 3 hours. Are we supposed to raise hands to get a question in? Well, I'm doing this on my phone today. I usually on my screen. Maybe I didn't see your question. What's the question? I'm sorry. 3 hours. I didn't know J.P. Morgan was working with Zcash. Zcash. What about remote viewing? Is that what you're talking about? 3 hours? Yeah, I have looked into remote viewing years ago. I don't know if you remember. I forgot the guy's name. Major Dames, Ed Dames. And I'm not too sure about that. I don't buy into it. They were calling for a major global coastal event, and it never happened. Major Dames, remote viewing, I'm not sure there are courses for remote viewing. I think it's more of a CIA psychological operation, remote viewing, to tell you the truth. I hope that's what you were asking about 3 hours. Monir Jabber, do you believe there will be a reset in the metals? It could be, there could be, but I mean, I think the metals have been resetting since 1968. Gold has been going up. Sometimes it goes up quicker, comes down, but there could be some kind of overnight reset, like Jim Sinclair said, and that's why it's always good to try to keep as much physical gold or silver as you can. I know sometimes we need to sell some because we need, you know, We need the money, right? It's just like savings. Peter says commercials have gone net long, first time in the history of the report. Yeah, that's what I've seen as well. How does a reset against the currency happen? Well, it's just the last reset we had, really official reset in the US, is 1933, 33, 34. FDR banned gold ownership. People had to hand in their gold to Federal Reserve banks in their region. And then he made it illegal to hold gold. And then the 1st of January 1934, the U.S. Congress and there was the Gold Act of 1934. It said that gold was now going to be worth $35 an ounce instead of $20.67 an ounce. That's the official. That's how they reset it. And what that did, that created inflation in the U.S. because it was suffering from deflation. So it inflated the money supply because you got more dollars for 1 ounce of gold. That's how you do a official reset. So let's say if we wake up on Tuesday after the Labor Day weekend, and the U.S. Treasury says we are now going to be buying gold between a range of $12,000 and $12,500 an ounce. They're going to keep it in that band, and they will have and they say, from today for this week, the gold markets are closed, COMEX is closed, and that's how they would do a reset. It wouldn't be pre-announced. See you, Peter. Thanks for showing up. Yeah, I don't think they'll do that again, Lord Humongous. I was just giving it as an example of how a reset worked. I think now they could do it through the market, gradual, or they could do it over a long weekend, like Jim Sinclair was talking about in his latest interview. So I'll take one or two more questions, and then I'll end the live stream. I've got to go now, and I'll probably be doing another video tomorrow anyway. When is the next QE in the US? I don't know if they're going to do a QE. Before they do QE now, I think they're going to cut rates. See, they've raised rates far enough so that next time they need to accommodate policy, they'll do it through cutting rates. I don't think they want to start QE again. Yeah, everyone. Peter, you're welcome. And yeah, thanks everyone for showing up. Thanks for all the super chat donations. I appreciate that. And also, if any of you haven't gotten any of the Monaco 64 merchandise, I'll put the link below in the description once this live stream is recorded. And I'd like to thank everyone as well for the donations, for the Patreon donations as well. I appreciate that. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great rest of Labor Day weekend if you're in the U.S. And if you're not, have a great rest of the week. Take care. Bye. Let me turn it.